Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&As, so let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, first question. Hi Jason, if I were to get into boxing 3 days a week, would that interfere with my ability to gain strength in the gym, and how should I go about handling the volume? This is kind of a textbook question. This is one similar to this that we get asked all the time. It's always someone starting a new sport, even if it's just totally recreationally, that is going to involve a fair amount of conditioning work, could lead to soreness, training interference, everything else. It's whether it's boxing, MMA, whatever it is that we're talking about. Something with this multifaceted performance component. Because I think either one of those sports qualify. You need speed, power, agility, conditioning. You need a lot of different things to even be remotely successful at any of those. So here's what it comes down to, brother. Until you get used to the boxing, your strength training is going to go on hold. That doesn't mean you stop training. It doesn't mean you stop lifting. It means you probably need to take whatever you're doing in the gym and stick with it consistent. You stop progressing. In other words, if you are using X amount of weight and X amount of reps and X amount of sets on every workout, that's what you need to keep doing. You might even have to reduce them slightly. In other words, if you're doing all your work sets with 300 pounds on the squat, you might need to drop to 285 or 280. All right, you might need to drop it 5% while you adapt to the new training stimulus, and it might take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, but you're going to have to get used to the new stimulus of boxing 3 days a week, because that's going to be a pretty big impact on your recovery. It's going to be a pretty big impact on your body's ability to adapt to new training stimulus, and you may have to back down a hair until you adapt. Once you get used to the boxing, which might take up to 6 weeks, then you can go back and start working on your strength more. But you're not going to be able to serve two masters, and you're not going to be able to focus with progression on both at the same time. And it's as simple as that. And in the long run, it'll be fine. Just understand that in the short term, you're going to have to stagnate, and you accept that when you decide you're going to add a new activity like that, and it'll be okay. In the end, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. All right, next question. Are there any problems doing 4x5 on the press and the bench on the same day 3 times a week following a full body program with no direct triceps work? Should volume be adjusted? Honestly, brother, it depends on your lifestyle and where you're at. Keep in mind, you do that on some of the days on my novice program. But I would say 3 days a week, assuming you can keep the progression in check and handle the volume of it, it should be fine. It should be perfectly fine. That is 8 sets of pressing 3 times a week for 24 total sets. What I am going to say is that if you are doing that, yeah, you're not going to have a lot of room for direct triceps work. Maybe you will. But if anything, that amount of training load on pressing every single week, particularly moderately heavy presses, because 5s are moderately heavy. They're not real heavy. They're moderately heavy. That's going to be a lot to handle. That is going to be a lot to handle. Can it be done? Absolutely. What I would say to that is that get in and experiment with it. Get your progression pattern down, and be ready to pay attention to little things like nagging elbow pain, making sure you're recovering. And you know what? Depending upon your lifestyle, depending upon your recovery, your sleep, your food, all of those things, you might actually find you can get away with more than that. You know, it's a very individual thing, and that's going to vary over time with your strength, your recovery ability, your work capacity. Those things are all dynamic. They do change over time, for better or for worse, depending upon all the other factors going on in your life, including even age. So I would say it's probably okay. Get in and experiment with it and give it a go, and then adjust the volume as needed, right? Volume adjustments, you always say, should volume be adjusted? Yes. Volume should generally be adjusted based upon goals and where you are at any given point in your work capacity and recovery, right? Volume should be adjusted accordingly. Particularly if you're not running a completely pre-written program, you're always going to need to make adjustments to volume based upon your individual needs. So I would say get in and experiment with it and find out where your limits lay. It's a good starting point. I think that's a totally reasonable starting point for someone who's already built a bit of a base. All right, next question. Hey coach, the other day I accidentally did my first set of deadlifts in squat shoes with the heel and went up so easy. Normally I have a sticky point around the knee, was smooth AF. Is it okay to deadlift with a stiff heel? And why would it have felt better than usual? Wouldn't it be a deficit of sorts? Thank you. Yeah, it is a deficit. It is a deficit. But you probably noticed that you had to get a little bit tighter, right? That's one of the benefits of the deficit deadlift. Yeah, they can make things a little harder because of longer range of motion, but they also force you to get tighter and pull more slack out of the bar to get a good pull, right? They force you to get tighter. Because your body knew something was off center and you had to get tighter, you probably did ratchet up better and you pulled from a better position. So if it felt so easy compared to normal, what does that tell you about your start position? It means that your current start position needs some work. And here's what I would say to you. You're like, is it okay to deadlift with a stiff heel? Well, you need to always have a stiff heel. What shoes are you deadlifting in that you don't have a stiff heel? They should always be as hard as possible for squatting, deadlifting, any of that. If you mean the elevated heel, yeah, it is a deficit. It's harder. That's what I'm doing right now to create a small deficit. It could be a good training tool. If it was easier for you, then maybe you know what you need to be doing right now. Maybe you should go ahead and pull for a little while in those shoes and figure out what's going on different and use that training tool to learn to get tighter out of the bottom, and then your normal deadlift without the shoes is probably going to go up. That's what I would say, because again, you had to do something slightly different to start, and it felt easier even with the longer range of motion. All right, that means that there is a problem, and the shoes will help you train around that. So yeah, I would say go ahead and pull in them for a little while and see if you don't get more explosiveness off the floor, because what you're describing, that knee slowdown, that sticky point, that's a tightness issue off the floor most of the time. So yeah, give these shoes a go for a cycle of training and see how they improve your regular deadlift. All right, next question. Hey coach, how can my conventional deadlift be so close to my low bar squat number? I can do 5 clean reps with 405 on the squat, but with just 425, it's a huge struggle on the deadlift. I'm 5'5", 175 pounds, training seriously 1.5 years. Keep up the good content, best regards. Couple possible explanations. Usually the biggest one, unless you're a very, very, very advanced lifter, because sometimes your squat and deadlift do get a lot closer together, unless you're, you're Keller Willem with really long arms. But you're talking about 1.5 years of serious training. But I mean, also at your body weight and everything, your squat is really strong. So actually your deadlift's not bad. What I'm going to say, 2 possibilities. Number 1, you're not squatting to depth. Video yourself from the side and see where your hips go. You may not be squatting to depth, which could be part of it. Number 2, you could have particularly short arms for your height. And I know you're like, well, I'm 5'5", that's not real tall. Maybe you have really short arms. So you could have shorter than average arms, which is making the deadlift a little more difficult. And it could be the fact that maybe you don't train the deadlift as much. There's a lot of different factors that could explain this, but usually it's going to be most likely going to be something to do with your squat depth or your arm length versus height ratio could be a factor. I'm going to guess it's probably one of those two or a combination of the two. So first thing I would do though is that's suspect on your depth. The first thing I would do is check my depth personally on the squat and make sure I'm actually going to full depth and I'm not cutting it short a few inches, thus giving you another 40 or 50 pounds on the squat. All right, next question. Hey Jason, bro lifting for almost 2 years before I wised up and started full body 3 times a week with progressive overload, etc. My question is, why do my legs stay so small and weak even after 6 months of squats to parallel with good form? I can't even get above 155 pounds for 5 reps. I'm 6'3", 183 with super long, skinny legs. My upper body looks huge and jacked with tiny thighs, and it's depressing, brother, after working squats for like a year. Thanks for all your good advice. Have a good day. Because you bro lifted for 2 years? Okay, you're starting out as a complete novice with legs. And here's what we need to talk about. You know that you're disproportionate. You know you need to fix it. You don't need a normal program. You need a lower body dominant program for a while. Let's just call it like it is. Let's call it like it is. You're saying your upper body looks huge and jacked with tiny thighs. How do you fix that? You need to do twice as much leg work as you do upper body work, and you need to let your upper body coast for a while. Because yeah, I'm gonna be honest, man, your stats and those squat numbers, and you admit that you look extremely disproportionate. You need to go ahead and spend the next year focusing on your squats and deadlifts and do about the same amount of total upper body volume maybe is what you're doing for those, and you need to do them first. So you need a full body to where you focus on squats and deadlifts, and then you need to do your little bit of upper body stuff after. You probably don't need to do more than about 3 exercises for your upper body or whatever you need to do to maintain it, and spend the next year just kind of maintaining that upper body and putting a heavy focus on your squats, because you missed a lot of your noob gains with them, and you're going to have to work really, really hard. And no, 6 months of doing squats on a program isn't going to be good enough if you're that disproportionate. You're actually going to need to specialize in legs for probably up to a year in order to balance everything back out, right? And that's what you're going to have to do if you're serious about fixing this problem that you don't like. And I agree, it can be a problem if you don't want to be a total gym bro that the people laugh at with the all upper body, and you guys know what I'm talking about. You have to spend a year correcting it. But if you feel like your upper body already looks good, it's going to be easy because you can let it coast for a while and it will be fine. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.